Hi, this is Lucky Robin, and today I am making Kaiser rolls, and I will be using Mrs. Wolfie's recipe. Well, I changed a little bit, but it's more or less her recipe. I'm using a metal bowl, so I warmed it up because I don't want the yeast to get cold from the metal of the bowl. So you need 1 1/4 cups of very warm water, tablespoon of sugar, and a tablespoon of yeast. And I'm just going to let that proof for 5 minutes, and then I'll come back to you. Alright, my yeast is all bubbly, so I know it's working. So I'm going to add a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. The original recipe calls for 1 teaspoon, and I've just half that. We're trying to cut the salt down in our diet. My husband has high blood pressure, I have high blood pressure, so it does not really alter anything as far as I can tell with taste. You can put in a teaspoon if you want to. Okay, 1 egg. I'm using a duck egg. So because duck eggs like to hold together a little better, I just kind of pre-scramble it. If it were just a chicken egg, I'd just dump it in, but it's not. And then 3 tablespoons of butter. It's supposed to be softened butter. My butter was hard, so I just melted it. Okay, and then next we're going to add 3 cups of flour. The original recipe calls for 2 3/4 cups to 3 cups. I use 3 cups right out of the gate because I've got different humidity, and it does make a difference. So I always tend to use a little more flour than other people. I don't know if that's because we're right at sea level and close to the bay, but it probably is. Alright, so with the first cup, I'm going to put this down. And start mixing. And I just turn it off between adding cups of flour, or it's going to poof the flour up into the camera. It up this time, it's just kind of in the way. Well, it wouldn't be in the way if the camera wasn't in the way on the other side, but it is. So, alright, and down we go. And I just like to scrape the sides down. And I just have this on 2 on the KitchenAid, by the way. Flour on the sides down again and into the dough. and we're going to let this knead for 5 minutes. Alright, it said it's 5 minutes, and it's really sticky. And I know it doesn't look much like dough, it looks a lot more like batter, but if I add any more flour than this, the humidity messes with it too. So even though it doesn't look much like dough, it'll turn out okay. Oh, I'm just going to pour in a little olive oil. And that oil greases the bowl, and then I don't have to use a different oil for raising. Alright. So I'm going to take this and I am going to put it into a warmer location because the KitchenAid is right by the window and it is freezing cold outside. Snow is coming down like crazy. We've had about 4 inches in 2 hours. And we already had plenty. I don't know if that'll show. That is what it looks like outside. Alright, so I'm going to cover this with a linen napkin for 30 minutes to an hour. Because it's cool, it might take longer than the 30 minutes I usually let it rise for. And we'll get back when that's done. And I'm flouring my hands. And gently push the dough down. Does not need to be punched. I know they call it punching it down, but you don't have to be violent with your dough. Alright, I got my pastry mat out, got my flour spread. Gently roll your dough out of the pot. And I just flour it up a little bit because it is a little sticky. Okay, we're gonna knead it just a little bit. It doesn't need much. Just to make it so it's not so sticky. And yeah, I am not a champion kneader. I usually let the KitchenAid do the kneading, but there's no need. How many times can I say that to do it for this? Okay. And I'm gonna form it into my ball here. And take our knife and cut it roughly in half. You can do this right on the silicone mat if you have one. It doesn't cut through or anything. Right. And then cut each half in half. And then in half again. So you'll have a total of 8 pieces of dough when you're done. And it's okay if they aren't exactly the same size. We're going to leave these to rise again. I'll even up some. Knife's a little sticky. Okay. Alright. So I'm just going to roll each section into a ball real quick. They aren't going to stay in balls, so this part doesn't really matter. I just like them to be rounded when I get started on rolling them out. Okay. And we just roll them into ropes. And yes, I am quite messy with this. We are going to have to vacuum when we are done, and by we I mean my husband will vacuum for me because he's nice like that. Okay, so I like to roll it out till it's about even with the edges of my circle. Which is 10 inches or so, 10 to 12 inches. And then you just take your rope, tie it in a knot, like so. Top piece goes under and up into the center. Bottom piece comes over and up into the center. And you have this pretty little shape of the Kaiser roll, and it goes onto your parchment lined baking sheet. So I will do one more for you, and I'll come back when I am done. Alright, tie it in a knot. Bottom one goes under and press up into the center, and top one comes over and press up into the center, or down into the center rather. Got your pretty little knot, and onto the parchment paper it goes. So the rolls are done now and ready to rise. So I'm just going to cover them and let them rise for, well, I'll check them after 30 minutes. If it's warm in the house, enough in the house, they should be ready to go in the oven in 30 minutes. But it might take an hour because of how cold it is outside. So we'll see, and I'll come back when they're risen. Okay. Alright, it's been 30 minutes, so let's take a peek. And yeah, that is plenty risen. So these are ready to go into the oven. 400 degrees for 20 to 25 minutes. Alright, it took 25 minutes at 400 degrees, but the rolls are done. And I am just going to brush them with some melted butter. Right, and there we go. So our nice, pretty Kaiser rice.